We always talk about the sustainable development here, right? And I found this idea from Reverend Gussick really fascinating.
Yeah, his work in Central America is really something totally different approach.
Yeah, it really struck me how he flips the script on traditional missions, like we think of going to these rural villages, but he's saying the cities are where it's at.
Makes sense when you think about it, people flocking to these cities for opportunity, a better life, ripe for new ideas, and yeah,
Yeah.
that includes faith.
Exactly. And he's not talking about just parachuting in resources. It's about building something sustainable, right?
Right, and that's where this whole early church model comes in. Gussick argues that by mirroring that structure, these urban churches can flourish both spiritually and, you guessed it, economically.
Okay, now you've got my attention. How does that even work? What does this model actually look like in practice?
So buckle up because this is interesting. First off, you got to ditch the image of a big church building.
Whoa, wait. Really? What? No church building? Where do they even meet then?
Exactly, that's the thing. They met in homes, small groups, 30 people, or even less.
Wow, that's intimate. I can see how that builds community, but was that like a stylistic choice or?
Not exactly. See, at the time, Roman law actually prohibited building churches.
Ah, so they had to get creative.
Exactly. And, limitations on construction meant homes were already small, so it kind of forced this house church model into existence.
And I bet that had a ripple effect on everything else, right? Not just where they met.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just about practicality. It really impacted their faith. Think about it, 30 people meeting in someone's living room.
You're really in it together at that point.
Right. There's a shared responsibility, intimacy that you don't get in a huge congregation. And then there's the leadership aspect.
Okay, yeah, because you can't exactly have a whole seminary-trained pastor on staff
Yeah,
for each little house church, can you?
exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting because they relied heavily on what we call lay leaders.
Lay leaders. So everyday people, not ordained ministers or anything?
You got it.
Yeah.
These were people who demonstrated character, spiritual gifts, natural leadership within their communities.
So it's like leadership bubbling up organically from the community.
And that ties back into the whole sustainability idea in a really cool way.
So how does this whole lay leader thing work in practice? I mean, it sounds great in theory, but how do you keep things running smoothly without that central authority figure?
Well, remember how we were talking about paid pastors earlier and how that model doesn't always translate well in these contexts?
Right. Gussick said that's not very sustainable.
Exactly. And this is a great example of that because they didn't have paid pastors in the early church.
So who was doing the actual pastoring then?
Okay, so picture this. You've got these house churches, right? Small, intimate gatherings.
Yeah.
And leading each one is a pastor, someone who's trusted by the community. But, and this is key, they're not doing it full time.
They've got other jobs, other things going on.
Exactly. They're still embedded in the community working alongside everyone else. And to make sure things stay connected spiritually, these pastors would have mentors or overseers.
It's like a support system almost.
Totally. It's about sharing the responsibility and knowledge. And get this model wasn't just for spiritual guidance. It had huge implications for their economic setup, too.
Oh, right. Gussick was talking about the deacons and deaconesses.
Yeah, exactly. Remember that example he gave of the deaconess who started a preschool?
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
So these deacons, men and women, were all about serving the community practically. They used their existing skills and resources to meet real needs. It's like this built-in support network powered by the community itself.
And that story about the Salvadoran refugees Gussick talked about really drove that point home.
Absolutely. Talk about resilience. When that outside funding disappeared, they didn't fall apart. They leaned on each other, used their skills to not just survive, but to thrive.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But here it's more like empower a community to fish together, and they'll create a whole ecosystem of abundance.
I love that. It really gets at the heart of what we've been discussing. It's not just about replicating a model from 2,000 years ago. It's about recognizing the power and potential that already exists within these communities.
It's about shifting our perspective from what do they need to what's already here and how can we help them unlock it.
Exactly. And that's a challenge worth taking on, don't you think?
Absolutely. It really makes you think twice about our assumptions about church missions development work, the whole shebang. So much food for thought from this deep dive. I hope everyone listening is as inspired as I am.